Welcome back to Truth Moment. Welcome back to Truth Moment. I'm your host, Tiara Pritchett. In today's episode, where do I start? I was having a conversation with a couple of my girlfriends, and we were talking about relationships. And I was giving them advice, but I could kind of tell that despite the fact that I've helped save a good bit of marriages and relationships, they still kind of wondered what relevance did I have, being that my marriage or my life seemed so picturesque. So I thought about it, and I had a conversation with my husband asking him, would he be willing to do a truth moment where we talk about us. And so about a year ago, a lot of people aren't really aware, my husband and I were headed towards divorce. I had actually taken the process to file for legal separation. And so what better guest to have on the show today than the person who not only knows the story, but shares the story with me. So Truth Moment, please help me welcome my best friend, business owner of an entertainment business, a rapper who travels all over to perfect and hone his craft, the father of my children, my husband, Harold Pritchett Sr. Harold, welcome to Truth Moment.
Thanks for having me, babe.
Okay.
Let me start off by saying you're beautiful.
Oh, God.
Second, I do want to say that this is long overdue.
Okay.
With me being on Truth Moment as a guest, and don't let it happen again.
Okay, just because he said that, this is probably going to be his last episode on Truth Moment. What were you thinking when I first asked you to come on television and share our story? Because we're typically so private about that.
Right. I was cool with it. I don't mind, especially if our story can help somebody else. I'm with it.
Okay.
But the caveat was that I was able to be myself and say what I wanted to say.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, so with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I don't even know what he's going to say. This is not scripted. And typically I will do an outline for Truth Moment, but in this episode, I said, why when this is our life? And I don't even know, like I said, he could jump up on the couch. He could get up and walk off. I don't know what he's going to do. He's just going to be himself.
Absolutely.
And I want to correct him on something, though, because when I first asked him for us to share our testimony about how we were going to get a divorce and now our relationship is so much better now. Our marriage is the best it's ever been, wouldn't you say?
Sure.
He was like, man, I ain't telling nobody my business. Didn't you say that?
I have no recollection of
yes,
any of that
you
going
did.
down like
you said you did not want to tell
Don't
anyone.
Even know.
So then what I did is that I prayed about it because I knew that when we were in our darkest of dark period, I only turned to one person, and that's my sister. And she was really there for me in that. But I knew that it could help someone to be able to talk about these types of things. It could help someone see that, you can go from your lowest of low and then get to your peak. And so in order to do that, I needed Harold to be on board because I wasn't going to discuss the private matters of our marriage without his not only permission, but his blessing as well.
Absolutely not.
So would you like to tell the story or do you want me to?
Babe, this is your show. You go ahead and start off and I will just feed off of you and correct you where you need to be corrected.
Whatever. Okay, so like I said, it was about a year ago. Harold and I, we've been together for quite some time. We started dating when we were 16 years old. And so we got married. We had our first child, our son. And then shortly after that, we found out we were expecting again. And we had our daughter, Taylor. So we lived in Indianapolis, moved from Indianapolis to South Carolina. And our time in South Carolina was some of the most straining and hardest on our marriage. And we'll get into that a little later. So about a year ago, so around Christmas of 2014, yes,
right. Yep.
2014, we had separated. I had went to go stay with my mother, and Harold was at the house by himself. And I took the children with me. And I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do it. And a lot of people have mentioned to me, I never would have known, on Facebook, because I don't feel it's necessary to allow Facebook to be your outreach, your outsource, your venting solution. So I didn't deviate. I still posted pictures with myself, Harold, and the children when we were good and when we were bad. Now, I didn't go on and say, it's the best ever, because that wasn't true. It wasn't. But I didn't feel that Facebook should have been my springboard for how bad things were. So things progressively got worse and worse and worse till I threw my hands up, and emotionally I wasn't there anymore. And I feel that he wasn't either. We got to a place to where we really couldn't stand being around each other. I would see Harold, my mood would be up here, and then I would see Harold, and my mood would completely tank. And I'm sure that he could say the same for him too.
I can.
So
there was disdain going on in that house.
There was a lot of disdain.
It was bad.
It
all
was
the way bad.
It was. And I went to a conference in October. And in the conference, I was telling my husband that one of the speakers said that children can take on an environment that has a lot of angst and anger in it. And it can be expressed through them having anxiety. And it can be expressed through them having asthma. So not saying that from a medical standpoint that having anxious environments creates asthma, but it certainly doesn't help, because it makes their airways constrict when they're feeling nervous. So I told him about that. Our daughter, our youngest child, Taylor, sometimes when she gets a cold, she gets sick, she can wheeze, and her colds last for a great deal of time. So I said, this isn't just affecting us, this is affecting our children as well. With me being a therapist, I didn't want to create or foster an environment to where we were hurting our little humans, to where when they became adults, they were carrying problems that their father and I faced when they were young. So I told him, I said, you remember that conversation?
Mm-hmm.
I said, we got to do something about this. Either we're going to make this work, or we're going to leave each other alone, and we're going to go our separate ways. But our children are the most important in this situation, so we can't do this to them. And what was your response? How did you feel about hearing that information?
I mean, I think anytime it comes back to the kids, it should cut you deep. I love my kids more than life itself, and I love my wife right now more than life itself. But, when you kind of factor in that, hey, me and her aren't getting along, but it's the kids that could be ultimately affected, I mean, it really makes you think and wonder what the best thing for you to do in your relationship is. Because, if me and her can't work it out, then, we need to be apart if it's going to be better for the kids long term. Because I didn't want them to grow up in a household where they experience yelling all the time, screaming all the time, fighting all the time, because when he said fight, when you said fighting. Not physically fighting.
Yeah, we didn't physically fight.
I just wanted to be tried.
don't
but
lie.
It wouldn't go down like that, because I'm a man about mine.
Anyway,
I held it off.
Anyway, I just wanted to get you to clarify.
Yeah, so no physical stuff going on, but just going, fighting just from an arguing standpoint, and just getting in each other's faces and yelling as loud as we could. And I mean, at the time we were living in a 4-bedroom house, five bed, somebody's bedroom's house, and so to where they could hear it upstairs, and it's just clear to them that mommy and daddy are going at it. I didn't want them to grow up like that, and so it's one of those things where you have to make a decision. Are we going to stay together and work this out, or are we going to split apart? But at the end of the day, it was what's best for the kids, along with us, because we deserve to be happy as well. But most importantly, our first responsibility right now should be the kids.
Absolutely. So when did it start turning for you?
Was it January? I think January, when we were, we all got together, or when I say all, I'm sorry, fais-one, our business partners, the Moores, and ourselves, obviously, we sat down and we basically just put all of our cards on the table. And, they were included because, Toya knew a lot about the situation and what was going on. And so she was able to vouch for T from a standpoint of things that she wasn't telling me Toya knew. And so, we sit there, we put it all on the table, voices were raised, but it was a good constructive yelling session to where we finally were able to just point out everything that was going on in our relationship and where we needed to improve, where we wanted each other to improve, to make it better. And so I think it was January or maybe February, somewhere around in there. I can't remember, of 2015. And I think at that moment, you factor in the kids and also laying all the cards on the table. And I knew I didn't want to leave. I mean, I didn't want to leave, and I didn't want to lose her or my kids because, first of all, I'm a very, very selfish man when it comes to my money. So I was not trying
Y'all don't even
to split that in half. Like half of my income going to her, and I don't like her right now.
Oh my
I was not
God.
about to have that. So, factoring, splitting
or half
up,
of my income. Let's just say that, okay? Half of my income going to him.
But yeah, and I had, T's a great mom. So
Thank you.
I would have had 0% chance of getting custody of those kids.
No, that wasn't gonna happen.
So, so the odds were not in my favor. So it's like, look, I can lose everything and attempt to start over, or I can, put my big boy drawers on and step up to the plate and, figure out a way to start loving my wife again, start trusting her, and, in turn, being more of a loving husband. I mean, things spiraled out of control quickly once we got to South Carolina, but we were able to rope it in and get it together before it completely fell apart. But contingency plans were made because I was not having it.
Anywho,
Love you, boo.
it was different for me, because you can remember even after that conversation, you were talking to me, and you said you felt like I wasn't there.
Right.
Like you felt like you were ready to try, and I wasn't. And that was very true. I wasn't. I said, okay, I'm going to try this time, but I wasn't ready to try. So it didn't matter what he was trying to do. I wasn't there. I didn't care. I had started to remove myself from the situation more and more. And so for me, the turning point wasn't until, when was that? It was like September. Yeah.
2015?
Yeah, it was like September 2015.
So you let me go almost a whole year of working hard and
No,
sweating out
don't
my
do that.
love for you?
Don't do that because you didn't.
Oh,
you do well, and then you fall off. You do well, and then you'd fall off.
Hey, man.
So then it was like, should I really
Some...
trust that he's ready to change and be different?
Sometimes, it's a roller coaster.
What was your, okay, so let me ask you something. Since we're going to put the cards out on Truth Moment, what was your insecurity as far as like the area where you felt like you needed me more, but I wasn't giving to you?
I mean, it wasn't an area. It's just that, so T said we've been together forever. And by forever, she means forever. So, I was a junior in high school. She was a senior in high school. Clarksville, Tennessee. Shout out Northeast. That's where we met. That's where we started dating. So you go this whole time, on and off. We've had, so this isn't our first breakup, or anything like that. It was just that this was the most significant, right?
Yeah, because we're married.
So you go from the age of 16 to 29, 30, so you got 13, 14 years in with somebody. This person is calling you the best friend. Y'all have great conversations, and then it just seems like one day, even though it wasn't one day, it just seems like one day, all that stops, and you don't have that anymore.
Yeah.
You don't have any. So while she was confiding in Toya, and their relationship was blossoming, because they were leaning on each other for different reasons, I felt like as if though I was alone, especially being still, even though it was a year and some change into living in South Carolina, it was still, I still had a very alone feeling because I felt like, okay, well, T's leaving me, mentally and emotionally. So now it's just me and the kids as far as like who I have a lot of interaction with. And so that's what, that's where the pullback and the animosity, once she started pulling back, that's where my anger and animosity started growing because, I was losing my best friend.
Okay. For me, my insecurity was you know, the cliche that, you know, to the world you may be, you know, everything, but to that one person, if seemingly you're nothing, then it doesn't mean anything. And that's how I felt. I felt like no matter how many great things I had going on in my life or in my world, that the one person that I was supposed to say, you know, this is us, this is it, this is our empire, that I didn't have that because I felt like Harold didn't support me. I felt like Harold, you know, I'm the type of person to where I like being shown affection. And I felt as though I wasn't getting it. And, you know, after we talked about it, I later heard that the reason why is because he felt alone. Well, I felt like I wasn't getting what I needed, you know, from an emotional standpoint from him. And so it caused me to shun him and want to push him away. So even when we sat down and we said, okay, we're going to try, it was just hard because I questioned whether or not I could trust my heart with him again. You know what I'm saying?
Well, no, and I think just to kind of expand on that a little bit, I think that as a man, these are not excuses. These are just reasonings because maybe your man or woman or whatever could be going through something similar, but T knows, and most people who know me know that leaving Indianapolis for me, outside of like my kids being in South Carolina, because Tierra and the kids came down before I did because I was still finishing up school. So, but I did not want to move to Columbia, South Carolina. And even when I got here, I really feel like, I absolutely hated living here. I hated everything about living in Columbia. T told me, God told me we're supposed to move here. And I was like, no, you want to live here because your mama lives here. You want to be close to her. And so the resentment started growing for, not necessarily for her, but kind of towards her for removing me out of my element and where a place where I felt like I wanted to be and where I wanted our kids to grow up. Because as a military brat, the one thing that I didn't want to do is continue to move frequently and a lot and all the time. So my resentment kind of started when we moved to Columbia, South Carolina. And as much as I tried to adjust early on, it was just very hard, especially when you don't have a social life and you don't really have friends and people you're connecting with immediately. It's just, I did not like anything about it. And, 3 years later, it's just now growing on me. But you can see, but it's just coming from a bigger city to a smaller city. That it wasn't necessarily a culture shock, but it was just I don't want to live here. I had my Pacers, I had my Colts, I had options. Here, I have the Gamecocks, and
we don't want the Gamecocks.
We don't. I'm sorry.
We don't.
But that's where it started, and I think, and with me, and also my career from a music standpoint was at that time was non-existent, and so when you're not doing anything, as much as you might say that you're supportive of your husband or wife or whatever, when you're not doing anything and they're doing what to you looks like everything, some more resentment starts coming because you're like, man, I'm hustling just as hard, but why aren't doors opening up for me when all I needed to do was be a cheerleader for her? And I believe things would have started snowballing. But instead of doing that initially, I allowed resentment to grow, and she could, I hate to say it, but women are very perceptive. They have that intuition, and as much as I tried to lie about it,
did.
And and this is early on. This is not like right now or within the past 6, 7, 8 months or whatever. But early on when she started out and she was just doing things and everything was just lightning for her, she had that intuition that my man's not here for me right now. He's not riding for me, and I wasn't, because the only thing I could think about was, what's Harold's next move as the leader of the house. So that's where it started. And I believe everything kind of snowballed from my resentment, from moving to Columbia, and my career not doing what I felt like it should be doing, or at least moving, because it wasn't doing anything. So that's all I had, babes.
Okay. That was very well said. And yes, I did used to say, "You don't have my back." He's like, "I do have your back. If nobody has your back, I got your back."
Exactly. And I lied through my teeth.
He was. He was.
Jealousy and envy of my wife.
Yeah.
Still jealous. I just hide it better.
Whatever. No, but that's very true, and I think that happens in relationships. But little did he know, while God was doing these things in my life, I prayed for Harold more than I prayed for myself, and I still do to this day. I just do, because I see how hard he works. I know how much he wants it, and I'm extremely selfless in that regard, as far as making sure that my wants, my petitions for God are from my husband. Because I'm like, I got people that are praying for me. I know my prayer warriors out there. I know y'all have me. At the time, I felt like my husband wasn't one of them. So I still prayed for him. But then, as his resentment grew, it was like a hatred we had for each other. It was. There's no other way to say it. It was a hatred that we had for each other. And I
believe you said it a couple times.
Did I hate you?
Yeah, oh yeah.
I probably did. But so we took our story and we were speaking to a couple of friends about it. And so I opened the floor for questions for us. If anyone had any questions for us to digest them. And one thing that we want to make evident, we're not claiming ourselves to be relationship experts. We're not. We're just speaking about our personal experience on those subjects, because that's all that we can do. Right. And, even though we went from a point to hating each other, we really had to, get to a place where we weren't trying anymore. Like, when things got better for us, it wasn't a try. I remember when Harold said, "Okay, I'm going to be all in. I need you to be all in." I said, "Okay, let's set aside time to spend time together. Let's set aside time to talk. Let's set aside no phone time." Like, I would say, "Okay, I'm going to put my phone in another room and talk." And that upset him, because he was saying, you shouldn't have to set aside time, to do these things. And so I literally had to tell God that, if we are to be together, you got to do it at this point, because I can't stand this man. And I don't want
like
to.
That sometimes.
It was like that a lot of times. I was like, God, I don't want to do this anymore. And one of the questions, we're going to get to them in a moment, but one of the questions was, did your outlook or perspective of marriage change because of what you were used to, as far as from your parents' standpoint? Sweetie, what's your perspective on that, as far as the model of marriage that was shown to you growing up?
Not really, I guess, is my answer. My mother, who was a beautiful, strong woman, was unfortunately not married, but, she gave me the love, and the love that I have for her is the type of love, to an extent that, like, she showed me how to love somebody and what unconditional love looks like. So I'm able to obviously pass that on to my children, but more importantly, pass that on to my wife. And even though our love is different and it changes every single day, just knowing, being brought up by a woman and, kind of seeing some of the things that they go through, it shows you what you don't want to put your own woman through. So
why you put me through it?
Because I'm a man and I am imperfect. Perfect now. I was imperfect back then, though. Oh, God.
Let me move before you get struck.
Hey, don't take me down, Lord. But, no, just a lot. I'm really and truly, a lot of my examples of marriages, I do have family members that are married, but a lot of mine came from really and truly like movies, stories, or, random people out. And so I really believe that, not really having that type of presence, it was, when we tied the knot in 2009, it was, well, we're going to do this on the fly, because I don't know what I'm doing. You may know what you're doing a little bit better than I do, but I know for sure on my side, I don't know. Am I supposed to share my whole bed with you? Are you gonna be still in the covers every night? Am I supposed to get mad because you still in the covers every night? Things like that. Little things. It's not the big things. It's the little things that you have to get used to. So, just being married and getting married and going from, single to marriage. I mean, it was all a learning curve.
Well, for me, my biological parents were not married. And so my mother married my father, my stepfather, when I was 4.5. And so my whole life, that was my example of marriage, having a two-parent household. And then they got divorced. So my model of marriage was shattered. And so then it wasn't, even with that being the case, it wasn't that I was willing to throw away my marriage because my model of marriage was thrown away, because my grandparents are married and have been for a very long time. So spending summers with them, and when I would spend school years down there, I saw marriage. I saw how much my grandmother loved my grandfather. I saw how much my grandfather loved my grandmother. But even still, I knew that, and what a lot of people have to realize is that you can have a model all you want, but no two people are alike. So my parents could have been married to this day, but that would just be a model. My husband and I would still be different, and so therefore his wants and his needs would be different from my dad's wants and needs from my mother, and mine separate from my mother's, from my father's. So we had to get to learn each other, and marriage is so important in that, because you're not going to always get along, you're not going to always agree, but as people grow, your marriage has to also.
Absolutely.
And that's how it's possible to fall in and out of love with people, which we have done. And I'm
Multiple
sure
times.
if we keep living longer, we will continue to fall in and out of love. Falling in and out of love isn't necessarily a bad thing. Because even when I was out of love with him, I still loved him. He was still my boy. Like,
Oh, I was about to say something, and it was about to be bad, but she told me to keep it PG.
Please do.
I'm going to keep it PG.
Thank you. He was going to have Toya working hard editing this episode. Y'all just don't know. But, yeah, it's possible to fall in and out of love. We've done it. And hearing someone say that they aren't in love isn't necessarily the end of the world.
It's not.
How did you feel whenever I would tell you that I wasn't in love?
I mean, my feelings were hurt.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any other way around it. Yeah, my feelings were just hurt, and it makes you question, well, am I really in love, or am I just here for the sake of being here?
Yeah.
And then I think that kind of opens the box a little bit for other emotions and insecurities to kind of enter in, because you start wondering about different things. And, it not necessarily, it doesn't have to be infidelity, just because someone says that they're not in love with you or they're not loving you right now doesn't mean that they're cheating or anything like that. But, I mean, different thoughts do enter your head when somebody expresses that they don't love you. I mean, they're not in love with you right now. But
So
I mean,
why didn't you apply your thoughts whenever you told me you weren't in love with me?
my thoughts are what?
Okay, so what I'm saying is you said different thoughts run through your head as to why my reasons could have been.
Mm-hmm.
So why didn't you apply your reasons? So if you said you were out of love, why didn't you say, well, I'm out of love for X, Y, and Z? So she may be out of love for X, Y, and Z as well. Why did you have to jump all the way
Again,
off the deep end?
because I'm a man and I like to speak before I think.
Okay.
And so, and just to put something out there on the table, and it's getting better, but T and I have a tendency to go for jugulars when we get to arguing.
Yeah.
We go over like, who gonna cry first?
Harold doesn't cry.
I don't. Who's gonna get the most mad
So I
first?
go real. I used to go in
man.
real hard.
Low blows.
I'm like, oh, I'm about to get a tear. I'm about to get a tear.
She tried to take me back to high school stuff, college stuff. I mean, but so yeah, and we conditioned ourselves to go for the jugular. So if I come to her with anything negative, they be like, yo, I didn't go grocery shopping today. What you mean you ain't go grocery shopping? But you went grocery shopping for the other chick. Then
See,
it would just all start.
Right.
I'm just saying, that is a very weak and mild example. But, it's just, when you're at that point and you hear negative things, our defense mechanism was to one up the other one. Well, you gonna say something hurtful, I'm gonna say something hurtful back.
Yeah.
And now, granted, when you've been together for as long as we have, you got plenty of hurtful things to say.
Yeah.
And they may not, they say the truth comes out and all these other things. They may not be true. It could just be, hey, I know that this is gonna kill you, and I know this is gonna cut you deep, and I'm gonna say it and suffer the consequences later. And I've said things. Yeah. And suffered the consequences for months later.
But I would say we've gotten better about that, wouldn't you? It's
yes,
like
progressively.
Before we used to be upset for quite some time. For an extended period, we would hold grudges. But now, like, we'll, if we get into a verbal altercation, he'll say, come here. And he knows that he knows certain things that, because like I said, I'm mushy.
She is.
So
very.
He'll be like, come here, beautiful. And then I'm like, and he'll be like, you want to smile. So then I'll smile and be like, oh my God, you do the most. But he does things like that. Like, we can argue over something simple and insignificant about whose turn it is to cook, to where I'm like, you know what? I ain't got nothing else to say to you. I'll see you when I get home. And then when I walk through the door, he'd be like, come here, girl. And I'm like, no, I still want to be mad at you.
Won't let it happen.
And then, but before, we didn't care. Like he said, we were in a 5-bedroom house, so it was easy to run with your tail between your legs and go in your separate corners and not talk to each other all day. But now we choose not to retire to separate corners. We always make sure we come back
Absolutely.
In the middle. But to get to these questions, the title of this episode being I Do, because, sometimes you wonder, did I really mean that when I said I do? So I'm going to read a question to you. You'll answer. I'll give feedback and tell you if you're wrong, which you will be. And then you'll take the tablet and you'll read a question to me. And I want to thank you again, everyone who submitted questions. We've received questions from Tennessee, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, New Jersey. We've received questions from everywhere. So again, thank you everyone who submitted, took time out to submit questions. Also received questions from Indianapolis. So thank you again for the questions.
Shout out Naptown.
First question. Do you believe in love at first sight?
Yes. Is that really a question?
It is a question.
Oh, yes. And I tell T this all the time. I walked into Miss Border's room, new student at a new high school, 11th grade, walked into the classroom. I saw Tierra. God told me that was my wife. Now, there was a delay in us getting together that we're not going to go through. But we eventually got together, and no matter what happened, what the many of breakups and fights that we've had, I always knew where home was, and I always knew where I was going to come back to. So I do believe in love at first sight, and I believe that, when you feel that, you should act on it.
Okay. I agree.
Shout out Northeast.
Again.
What up, Miss Borders?
Oh, gosh. So I do as well. I was with Michelle. We were standing by her car, and I saw him. He went by the name of Truett back then in high school. And I saw him and I said, Michelle, that's going to be my husband right there. I'm going to marry him. And she's like, what? She's laughing and everything. And so people said, even with all the breakups, they say, we knew y'all were going to get married. We kind of spoke it into the atmosphere back then as 16-year-olds. And, it came into fruition. So your turn. Ask the next question, babe.
Oh, man. All right. How big of a role did the children play in making you stay?
It's a good question.
You answer first, or you want me to answer first?
I'll answer first. They played a huge role because I remember one time distinctively, we left. I packed the children up. We left, and it was around Christmas time. And so I was bringing the children back over. This wasn't last Christmas before last. I was bringing the children over because my mother-in-law was coming in town, and I didn't want her to not see them. And so I was going to drop them off. they were going to stay until Christmas Eve. And Christmas Eve, I was going to get them and then take them back to my mother's house with me. I had packed up all the presents and everything. And so when I was turning to say bye to my daughter, she said, Mommy, no, I want you to stay. And I said, it's okay. Your daddy's here, grandma's here, Uncle Raymond's here. I'll come and see you. I'll get you tomorrow. And she said, no, I want you to stay here too. And I want you to sleep in the room with daddy. And I was like, I'm gonna see you in the morning, Tay. And she wasn't having it. She started to cry and she was like, no, Mommy, I want you to. And anytime we would get into arguments, we try to keep the children out of it, but like you said, it was loud. And they would say to me, we want you and Daddy to be together. I want my daddy. I want Daddy around. Whenever we separated, they would want their father around. So it was huge for me because I didn't want them to be raised in a single parent household, but if I had to, then I was going to be willing to. And that's important because you shouldn't just stay for children. Like I said, this is my situation, my story, but for everyone, that's not the case. Sometimes you have to do what's right and what's best for you. But in my case, my children, they played a huge part on staying or going because they love their father, and I didn't want Taylor.
They love Daddy.
I didn't want Taylor to look for anyone else for validation when she gets it every day at home with her father. So what's your...
No, I don't... I think that we kind of covered it earlier, so I don't want to, repeat it. But yeah, I mean, they were huge. And again, for me, just not having them in my life every single day, knowing that I can see them when I want to see them. I can pick them up when I want to pick them up. I don't have to worry about going out of my way or have who I need to talk to see them. I can come see my kids play, at least initially played a huge part in me wanting to work it out. And, even as serious as we were about not being together, the kids were always at the forefront of it because I love my kids. I can't lose them. I have nothing if I lost them.
Oh, gosh.
Don't play me.
Okay. Do men actually like to be pursued by women? How ironic that you get this one asked you. Do men actually like to be pursued by women? And is that being too forward if a woman pursues a guy?
For the record, and anybody who knows me knows the story, T did approach me first. So even though God told me that she was going to be my wife, I was in a relationship with another girl in high school before me and T got together. And she came over to me and she smooth talked me.
Why are you lying? We was at homecoming.
No. How did we get to homecoming?
No. Homecoming is when I told you that I was feeling
right, but how did we get to homecoming?
We drove separate cars.
So look, check this out. Here's the story. So I'm sitting at my desk trying to do my English work.
Here we go.
I was like, yo, Miss Borders, I got this. And she was like, hey, I heard you and your girl aren't going to, homecoming. I was like, yeah. She's like, well, you know what? We're cool, so how about you go with me? I don't think she'll mind. Played me from the start.
I did do that.
And then
your girl's smooth, right?
Yeah, went to homecoming together, danced our little song, grabbed the butt a couple times,
Harold.
And the rest was history, man. It was the butt grab.
Oh my god!
Don't let me tell you otherwise. I had to get one out, man.
Clearly.
One, baby.
Okay.
Oh, but to answer the question. What was the question? To answer the question, yes, men do like to be pursued. However, and this is just my opinion because of my relationship. Mm-hmm. And T's really been the only woman to actually pursue me like that. Kind of, even though she played me and she gamed me, to come and, approach me first about at least doing something together. As a woman, I think it's cool if you do go get what you want, but at the same time, you don't need to be the pursuer after the first maybe couple initial times, because a man, at least this man, I like the chase. So even though she pursued me, I still had to chase after her. And I think that that's very important, if you're thinking long term, that your man chases after you versus you always chasing after him.
And to answer that, I think it depends on the man. In my husband's case, his mother's very strong, outspoken.
She is.
Lama. Dominant, and so is his woman. So I can't see him, I guess if a woman was very meek and timid, I can't see that being attractive to you or you wanting to have long term with that.
Right.
And I joked around with the girls about it. I said, typically a man will pursue aggressively a woman that he's looking for something short term with. So a situation where he wants to sleep with her, okay, I will aggressively pursue you. But in you're talking about wifey type or wifey material, then he may play, the laid back role and see just how serious she is about it before he allows himself to experience that vulnerability of allowing his feelings to be on display for her. I told you, I get paid to do what I do, and man. I do it well. Yeah, you like how I just read the male population like that, right? So, okay. This question you're going to read.
All right. Man, this is a book. All right. If we as women are to stroke our man's ego occasionally and protect his pride, shouldn't he be just as conscious with our confidence as women?
I think he should. But you got to know, again, that goes to you got to know who you're with. If you're with a man who typically needs that constant support and you maybe don't need it as much, or in our case, even better, Harold gave a really good example where it seemed like everything was popping off for me. So where it wasn't for him, he needed me more in that capacity at that time, and I really didn't need it as much. So you got to look at your situation and the person that you're with. So I feel as if it was a vice versa thing. And I had moved when I moved to Indianapolis and I didn't know anyone and you had friends. But if I needed that and I was in a place of feeling low, then yes, I feel he is responsible to build me up, knowing that I'm the type of woman that feeds off of your affection and your attention.
I agree with everything she just said.
He just doesn't want to have to repeat it. Okay. All right, Harold, this is a good one. What else can you do besides praying to fight lust?
Just hold on to God's unchanging hand.
You know what? If you're not going to be serious, then...
No, you know what? I think that you just need to be real with yourself. And not to, make it seem like it's, how they want you to... Substance abuse people want you to, attack that problem, call that problem out and say, hey, I am such and such. But, you just need to be real with yourself in the fact that, if you have lust in your heart, and on your mind constantly, just be real. Like, I need, outside of just praying about it, you need to be real with yourself and just say, I have got this, this issue going on right now. But most importantly, if you want to take all that out and still saying, hey, what am I supposed to do? Man, you better look at your wife or whomever you're with and just say, do I really want to lose this because I have lust in my heart? There are a lot of beautiful people out there, a lot of them, and, maybe you've experienced other people, in that capacity, and maybe you haven't, but I don't think that, at least for me, no one that, that someone else calls very attractive or somebody that might be on TV or just some random woman walking down these Columbia streets, is worth my marriage. So even if I were to have, just be lusting after something, I would never bring it home and I would never, go into that temptation to fulfill that lust. I mean, because the only lust that I pursue is the lust for my wife, which I pursue frequently.
Oh, God. Why don't you speak to what you told me the other day when I asked you why don't you attend certain places or you go to certain places?
Yes, remove yourself from places where you can't control yourself, or you feel like...
No, I think you should speak to that. That's real.
I just did, man.
No.
Just don't go there.
Place?
What place am I talking about? Or what place are you talking about?
The place that you told me that you don't go to, and I asked you, why don't you go to these places?
The
As
bar?
a man, why don't you go to these
strip
places?
clubs?
Yeah, why don't you go to strip clubs?
Man, listen, it's one thing to watch, women get naked in a movie. And, and that's fine. But I think that if you...
That's fine? What type of movie,
Well, I'm just saying...
You talking about porn?
Hey, man. No, I'm just talking about regular movies. See, man, she try to put your boy on the spot. Listen. It's one thing to watch, to be watching a movie, regular movie, and breasts and stuff are out. That's fine. It's in the movie. They put it in there for a reason. But, you know, like, I'm not watching that movie to see that, you know. But if you're going to a strip club, as much as people say, hey, you know, it's real chill, the atmosphere is cool, you know, you're with your boys, or your girls, your people, you're kicking it, it's a lot of fun. I feel as if, you know, if you're
speaking for yourself.
Speaking for me, you know, I can't put myself in those environments because, you know, I'm going to look at that and not necessarily want them, but it is going to make me
enticed.
Right. You know, and and I'm trying to figure out a way to say this without sounding like a punk. But, you know, I don't want to bring that home to my wife from a sense of, okay, I go to the strip club or I go
get turned on.
Right. You know, and come home and have relations with my wife, but I'm not really having relations with my wife. You know, and I love our relationship, all, you know, everything about it, and I wouldn't want anything to taint that moment because, again, women's intuition, you know, if you are different in bed with a woman, or if you're different in general with a woman, they can tell that something's going on, and that was, you know, why were you so different this time than you have been every other time. And so I refuse to go. I've been to a strip club one time. I refuse to go for the simple fact is that I don't need that lust spirit on my shoulders when I come home. And I don't need to be thinking about some other woman's breast bouncing in my face. Oh, I didn't mean to say that. Toya, you got that one right.
Oh my God. Harold. Okay, so, yeah, like I said, you just never know what is going to come out of this guy's mouth.
Oh, yeah, that would caught me off guard.
Anyway.
So you should have said it. You shouldn't have said it. You should just.
I don't have an issue with that answer. I don't have an issue with that because I asked him, you know, have you ever thought about it? Because I know that some men go to them, especially in your industry, in the entertainment field and music. They go there for business meetings, and so I was asking, why don't you? And he, you know, said why he doesn't. Another question that I have, just when I just thought about it, how difficult is it dating a woman who has low self-esteem or doesn't have confidence in herself?
It's very difficult. I mean, because it's difficult because you feel like you're having to reassure her all the time, you know, and you feel like you're having to convince her of what you see all the time. And, you know, I'm not an emotional guy, and I don't have time for that. So, you know, if my lady is down, I got her back. You know, and even if she's going through things for an extended period of time, I've got her back. But I couldn't have been with T long term if I was having to tell her every single day, you know, how great of a woman she is. You know, for the sake of telling, like, I can tell her she's a great woman. She's pretty. You know, she's got it going on. I can tell her all that as long as it's coming from a place of I'm, you know, just out of love telling her that. But if I'm having to tell her that to make sure she makes it through her day, I ain't got time for that, man. It's hard. It's hard for me. I avoid those women.
You better be avoiding all women.
I am avoiding all women.
Okay, and how can you allow or let a man be a man who doesn't know how to lead?
You picked the wrong man. Next question.
That's terrible. That is terrible.
Hey, you know?
Okay, and last question. Someone asked me my thoughts on submission. I'm not going to answer that one. No, I'm joking. We can answer the question on submission. But, okay, here's a good one. Should the wife or husband have a relationship or friendship, rather, with the opposite sex whom doesn't talk to or respect that spouse? So, how would you feel about me having guy friends who don't have...
I hate them all.
Except for Brian, right? Yeah, right.
Nah, you know, I don't mind I'm a very secure guy in my situation. Out of everything me and T have been through, you know, she's either here or she's not here. I think that's really the point that I'm at in our relationship. So I don't have time to worry about, well, you know, why did you add Joe on Facebook, or who is this guy, or who is that guy? Now, I only want to know if there is consistent communication, and not from a jealousy standpoint, just of a who is this person? I don't have to talk to him. I don't have to know anything about him. But if she's talking to him, then I want to know. So for me, I could care less.
What if he doesn't like you?
Oh,
if I've told you, like, yeah, man, he said that, the last time we went through, I should have left you alone.
Oh, that brother's got to go. He ain't got your best interest in heart. He's got his loins on his mind. Satisfying his cravings and urges. I don't have time for that. So if you got it in for my wife and you think I ain't doing my job, step off.
Anyway.
Thug life.
Anyway, you want Tori to zoom in on that part?
Should have got you.
Anyway,
work that out.
When there was a time where I didn't like Harold having female friends, but that was when I was insecure with myself. And I went through a period after our second child where I was depressed. I was going through postpartum depression, and I felt like I didn't have anything to offer because I was a stay-at-home mom. And now I realize, with all the jobs and all the many hats that I have, being a mother to our children, that's the most important job that I ever could have. And I walk with an air of confidence just because I know who it is that God made me to be. And there's only one me. Out of all the people in the world, there's only one me. So him having female friends, it doesn't bother me because, like he said before, he knows we're home. He knows what's up. So I'm not even tripping or worrying about that. And plus, Harold tells on himself too. What you think about
my last comment the comment about strip clubs? Just thought about that.
And you wanted to laugh, didn't you?
Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh my goodness.
I sure hope that you have learned something from the Pritchetts. That this has been as rewarding for you as it has been for me. I can't speak for him, but at least for me, because it allowed me to see just how far we've come from. Because we're in a place now, like, I could say like this, that's my boy, that's my best friend. We don't have to set aside time to talk. Like, we spend so much time together without cell phones, without prompting each other to not have cell phones. And we just lay up under each other and laugh and talk. And, we have some of the best conversations. He really is. I talk to him about all of my business endeavors. And when I tell you that this man supports me, I know without a shadow of a doubt, with everything in me, that he supports me. I know that he's praying for me, that he's riding for me. And I'm appreciative of him for that. I'm thankful, do the most. I'm thankful for that. And Harold, do you have anything that you would like to say? Of course you do. Go ahead, address the audience.
I had fun. This was a lot of fun. Thank you for allowing me to sit on this couch here that I own. And and sharing this story, and it is true. I think a lot of times, not to get all spiritual, but a lot of times you kind of forget where you came from, and you forget what God has brought you out of.
Yeah.
And this was just just when she approached me about it, and I finally said yes. It made me go back and think about a lot of the tough and rough times that we've had, and compared to where we are now, and it just makes you thankful. Thankful that we haven't, number one, killed each other, and that we haven't left each other either. And I figure, as bad as this past time was, it probably can't get any worse.
Yeah, I would be willing to agree with that.
Without us both doing something specific, and like if she cheated on me, she got to go, and I'm keeping the kids. I'm gonna fight that one tooth and nail. But other than that, man, we good, babes. Got this.
Right. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Tierra Pritchett.
And I am Harold Pritchett.
I know you're going to try to cut me off and say it. That's our truth moment.
What's yours?
Oh, God. This guy.
Phase one.